Welcome to another edition of Hickory Street Podcast. um, Thank you to the 5 listeners that I have. It's not about quantity, it's about quality, right? So this is just going to be a solo episode. And the title of this one is Why It's All in Your Head and How a Bad Relationship Can Ruin Your Life. I'm not going to go too much into details. This is really going to be more of just kind of a food for thought episode that I hope helps people. And I will share pieces of my experiences just for the sake of making a point or getting someone to think about something. But why it's all in your head. So this part of the topic of the podcast is really just about understanding anxiety and where it comes from and where it surfaces. And I'm going to try to encourage people to do some personal research. I think that there's a quote-unquote potential epidemic of anxiety-ridden people, and it's a completely natural and normal emotion. It actually has a lot of environmental advantages associated with it, and there's probably a lot of positive things that I can think of that came out of my own personal issues with anxiety, but I will say that it was a conscious decision for me to use my anxious feelings and my issues with anxiety to my benefit. And this is something that nobody could really see on the outside, but I knew that I was doing this because I made a decision to do this. So let me kind of backtrack a little bit. I'll have to apologize up front. I just got back from the gym and I haven't eaten yet, so if I take a little bit longer than usual to come up with a thought, it's because I'm starting to get hungry. So I would say, I think the best way to start this off would be, I would say that by the time I was 25, I think by the time I was 25, I logically, and this is the key point here, I logically understood pretty much everything I needed to know about life. And I'm strictly thinking about this from a logical standpoint, okay? This is completely excluding the emotional. I definitely dealt with a lot of the emotional issues that comes with understanding harsh realities long after the age of 25. And I know I'm only 28, but it's been 3 years, and I still notice, and I have conversations with my dad about this a lot, but I still notice how things will affect me emotionally that I logically understand I can't change, or I can't control. That's my big thing, is that I have an issue with letting go, and this is just, something that I struggle with, and I'm sure a lot of other people have this too, but and I'll get to that a little bit later. But kind of going back to the anxiety, so I got my first apartment when I was 19, and I lived alone. Like, I didn't get an apartment and have a roommate. I lived in a dorm with a roommate my first year of college, right at 18. So, I mean, I did have roommates. I actually changed roommates once. And me and my friend Joseph make fun of my second roommate all the time. Actually, we make fun of both of the roommates I had, because I just had really bad luck with roommates. I have had a lot of bad luck in my life. Quite a bit, but I've also been very lucky in other aspects. So, I mean, I guess it's balanced itself out. I mean, how much can you really ask for? You know what I mean? You really can't have everything in life, And the people that, get really lucky in one aspect of their life are usually unidimensional. So they don't have many facets to their personality, which is something I'm kind of grateful for, is that my misfortune has turned into a plethora of interests. So, because I had a lot of time to focus on other things. So, anyways, whenever I started living on my own, I was working probably like 50 hours a week, close to it. And it was a customer service job that sucked. And I drove a car that sucked. And I lived in an apartment with like hardly any furniture. Thankfully, my girlfriend at the time, her dad, was nice enough to give me 2 like brand new, almost leather couches that someone was just trying to get rid of. I mean, these couches were probably worth like $800 or $1,000 a piece. I mean, they were really nice. And unfortunately, I had to give them away whenever I moved, because I moved in with another girlfriend, and she was after the relationship like didn't work out. I was left with these couches in an apartment and no space to put them in, because the apartment I was moving in like was fully furnished. So, but that's a sidetrack note. So going back to anxiety. So the biggest issue in my life at that time was, one, the bad relationship I was in. That was probably the biggest. And that contributed to this underlying anxiety that I ended up being forced to face with at the end of the relationship. And without giving too many details, this was a relationship with someone that was very close in age to me, but had a lot of trauma that they weren't handling very well, and I was very naive and lonely, and so it was a situation where I was sort of holding on to the relationship purely because I thought I was in love, and she thought she was in love with me, but really we were sort of like using each other in different ways, and she was very dishonest with me very early on, in the relationship, and I sort of just allowed it to happen because I really did not have much experience with dating at the time. Like, I think I had only had one real girlfriend during that time, like before it, and it ended because I moved for college and she like found another guy essentially. But and I had kind of found another girl. It was just one of those things that just, it happens whenever you're in the process of going through a lot of changes at a young age. But I mean, we've talked since then, and I mean, she's in a new relationship, but like I don't really care. I don't really care to like be friends, She essentially just told me sorry, and I was like, yeah, I apologize too. Cool, are we done? Sort of a thing. In hindsight, she really didn't mean that much to me. The idea of her meant more, which I think is pretty typical. But through all of the deceit that happened in that fairly short relationship, and not having a roommate to kind of keep me sane, the people that I confided in at the end of that relationship, because I was very emotionally distressed, were people that I thought were my friends, but quickly realized were really just interested in getting drunk together. And my friend Joseph was the only real friend in my corner. And I made some new friends through Joseph, really, but Joseph has been like my closest friend during that. Like, even now, I would consider it, and it's really funny because we have totally opposite personalities, but the only reason why I think that we're still friends is because we just met at the right time, like at the right age, you know what I mean? Like, we have nothing in common, but we were sort of in a place neither of us really cared to be, and just kind of like stuck at a college that we didn't really care for, doing nothing essentially, and there was hardly anybody else that either of us got along with. So, and he's been a really good and supportive friend of like my music and stuff. And anyways, so he really helped me through that period of time. But it was always kind of a situation where whenever I would go home and I was alone, and I had to be alone because I couldn't drive an hour to go hang out with Joseph every day. The things that I was faced with were all perception based. It was very cerebral. So my mind would start to play tricks on me. Is the best way I think I can describe it. I started noticing that whenever I would go to public places, I felt like I couldn't talk to people. Like I couldn't strike up a conversation with anybody new. I was just paralyzed socially. Because I felt like I couldn't trust anybody. It was like something activated in my brain, and it was sort of a situation where everyone was a threat, because my friends group that I thought was my friends group weren't really friends and were talking very negatively and like trying to get people to trick me into doing shit that was not good. And so I became very hyper skeptical of like everyone in my environment, no matter where I was. And during this time period, I really only stuck to a group of like, I don't know, 3 people. There were probably like 3 people that I knew I could trust enough to be around. And unfortunately, I didn't really see them that much. And I kind of ruined a friendship with one of them. But it was not really, it wasn't 100% my fault. I mean, it was kind of a mutual thing that I started, you know, like I made the wrong move once, and then he ended up making a very bad move later. And at that point I was just like, okay, yeah, we just can't keep, this isn't a friendship. We can't keep like fucking each other's lives up. So, at that point, my circle got so small that I turned to alcohol really as the social lubricant, which is a very common theme for pretty much everybody I've met in my life. It's just really easy to not care whenever you're drunk. And a lot of people do a lot of stupid things and don't care when they're drunk. And I had like just turned 21 around this time period. This was obviously like 2 years after this bad relationship ended, and I had another bad relationship pretty quickly after that. And we can go into like all of the psychological reasons and all that, but it's all stuff that I've already been made aware of, and it's pretty boring for me to. It would be pretty boring for me to just talk about in its entirety. So I'm not gonna really do that, but there's tons of shit you can read out there about like why people put themselves in bad situations. But anyways, so I just became hyper. Okay, let me kind of explain this. So at some point, I made a decision I wasn't gonna drink anymore. I had gained a lot of weight. I got up to like 200 pounds in fat. Because I was sitting down all day for work, and I was drinking like every night whenever I would get home, sometimes in the morning. So I was smoking at that point. I think I was like smoking probably half a pack a day. So I started to try to be healthy, but I quickly gave up and got into a relationship that was still to this day is like my longest lasting relationship. It only lasted for a year, but it was something that it was a relationship where I didn't necessarily feel threatened, and so my anxiety issues kind of subsided. I think that's fairly natural, is that anxiety kind of subsides if you're around someone a lot. We're social creatures, so that like logically makes a lot of sense. But then that relationship ended badly, and at that point I had moved out moved out here, and while I was out here, I was 23 and I was going to college, but most of the people in my classes were like fresh out of high school. So I didn't relate to hardly anybody, and I didn't really connect with very many people. And so I was in this town where I didn't know anybody, and the one friend that I did have out here actually moved almost as soon as I moved here. So it was really unfortunate, but I kind of turned back to the drinking again. Which, I mean, I was still drinking in the relationship, but it wasn't hardly as bad. And so started drinking a lot again, and anxiety came back. I started smoking a lot again, and I did that for probably close to a year and a half, maybe close to 2 years. But I was in college, and so I had school. I essentially just dove all into my studies. Because I mean, I was naturally interested in history, and school has never come easy for me. And I was spending a lot of money on my classes, and I understood this, so I took school extremely seriously. And so I used my anxiety, and this is where I'm getting to the positive aspect. I used my anxiety to further my intellectual abilities. And whenever I was 22, 23, somewhere around there, I decided I was going to stop smoking, and I was going to stop drinking because I was suicidal, and I knew that. But I also knew that if I continued on this path, it was not going to go well for me. And at that point, I was smoking like a pack a day, and I was born with asthma. So, smoking that much like really affected me, and my mom smoked around me whenever I was a kid. Like, it was very normal, and she even smoked while she was pregnant with me, which is partly why I think I was born with asthma. But anyways, so I stopped smoking, I stopped drinking, and I just focused all of my energy into working out, trying to get healthy. I went vegetarian. I was vegetarian for like 7 years. I went vegetarian whenever I was 21, and this is actually a source of contention as like why that relationship didn't work out. I went vegetarian, and she continually tried to like change my lifestyle. Like, I was trying to get healthy because I knew that I just didn't feel good, like physically. I felt sick all the time, and she just continued to try to push me out of that. So, bad relationship. Don't ever stay with someone that does something like that, or like, even if it's, like, you can distinguish whenever someone's just kind of trying to make a joke in the moment, but or whenever someone's like really bothered by your lifestyle changes. And she was just bothered by it because it made her insecure, like brought out all of her insecurities essentially. Which is something I couldn't do anything about. So I ended it and moved on. I still had some like weird emotions in the moment about it, but that was really just, they were all like selfish negative emotions. Just like realizing that my first real mature relationship was ending, and just like the sadness associated with that. But anyways, so then, I used my anxiety to get healthy, stop smoking, stop drinking for like 3 months, and it actually took me like a full year to completely stop smoking, but I did it entirely on my own. I didn't use any nicotine patches or nicotine gum or anything like that. I just started rolling my own cigarettes, and it took so goddamn long that I didn't have the motivation to smoke, and I sucked at rolling cigarettes. So I just, at some point, I ran out of papers, and I was smoking so infrequently that I was done. That was it. And the anxiety kind of lingered still, despite the fact that I was healthy and I was really active, and I was putting a lot of energy into music. And I thought the music was helping me. I really did, but it wasn't, because it was allowing me to glorify my negative feelings and sit in them and adopt a victim mindset. And this is, I don't think that it was necessarily the music that was doing that. It was me allowing the idea of music and the culture of music. That was me allowing that to kind of fill in the pieces of my personality that were undeveloped, is the best way I can describe it. And so whenever I did that, I still had a lot of the same issues that I was dealing with as far as like approaching new people. I had this idea in my head that everybody thought I was a loser. That like everybody thought that I was dumb, or that they didn't like me. I read facial expressions very well, so like any hint of negativity, if I would like make an effort to try to like be friends with someone and saw that they were giving me a dirty look or something, like I would feel it. And so a lot of times I would just kind of walk away and, just like go home, or sit in a corner of the bar or wherever I was, and just because it felt safer, it just like, if it just felt better to not have those negative, not deal with the negative feelings that I was experiencing. But it was all in my head, and I feel like I wasted a lot of time dealing with those things. Probably most of my early 20s. And I did go to therapy. I'm not in therapy anymore. I've completely graduated from therapy. I got everything I needed out of it, really. And the therapy did not actually start until I was 25 or 26. I think I had like just turned 26 whenever I started going. So, it was what therapy really did though to essentially get rid of my anxiety, because it really did. Um, it just allowed me to, like, a space to emotionally process things that I was logically trying to constantly make sense of. And I still deal with that perpetually, but it's something that I just kind of need to talk to someone about. And typically it's, I have plenty of people that I can talk to about it. And if there's people that are struggling with this sort of thing of just kind of looking at everybody and believing that they're a threat, the best way to go about it really is to, like, really talk through something with, because I really think that therapy could have been supplemented by a really good friend, or like a really good older mentor. But allowing the space to mentally process and emotionally, like keyword emotionally process, because there is some there are some mental aspects that you have to pay attention to, and they're primarily behavioral, because most problems can be fixed if you change your behavior. And that's something I learned through my experiences. But everybody learns differently, so learning how to do that is something you're gonna have to kind of go through. But I'm kind of at the point now in my life where nothing really surprises me. I've pretty much seen it all. I mean, just the day and age that we're living in right now, there are so many things happening that have happened that I've been paying attention to, and really kind of having to deal with it on some level. And it's something that everybody's trying to navigate and deal with. And finding commonalities with people is it's surprisingly very easy to do. But a lot of people choose not to, unfortunately. And I think it kind of adds to a negative spiral, and it doesn't really bring people together. Doesn't seem very productive to me. But, I've been really lucky in my life that a lot of these bad relationships didn't work out, because I would be absolutely miserable. And I will mention too that there was a moment that I had, I guess about a year ago now, with someone that I thought I cared very deeply about. But whenever, and this was someone that, like, I tried to make work twice. Like, I gave them 2 opportunities, essentially, and it was a very, like, bad and sticky situation. And I won't get into, like, too many of the details, really, but essentially, dishonesty again broke through this, and it was primarily on her end. There were a lot of things that she did not make clear about what she wanted. She didn't know how to communicate, and so I was operating on this sort of plane of understanding, and then she flipped it on me and confused me, and so I just sort of reacted. But I mean, like, technically I wasn't doing anything wrong. At least the first time. The second time it was initiated, like the issues were initiated on her end again, purely because of poor communication. And see, that's the thing, like, you can't force someone to communicate clearly. You just can't. You can invite someone to communicate more clearly, but a lot of people are afraid to tell you what they actually want because of their own insecurities or their own histories and personal struggles. And you have to just let go of that. You have to let go. The idea of who they are is not who they actually are. And paying attention to who someone actually is extremely important. And this person liked to play a lot of emotional games, while simultaneously claiming that they weren't, but obviously were, because whenever I didn't give them the reaction or say the thing that they wanted me to say, it was a problem. And I was blamed, essentially. This person in particular could have really ruined my life. Not because of anything she would say after the relationship, because I know that most of what she would say would be, she would have to implicate herself, which she's not willing to do. Her ego is way too big for that. But you know, it's one of those things where actions always speak louder than words. And this person would act so surprised that I didn't trust them that it was kind of unfathomable, to the degree they were unwilling to talk to me whenever I was giving them every opportunity. And whenever someone is not taking an opportunity to discuss, what it really means is that they do not care. That there's no other explanation for it. And it hurts, it sucks to be in that moment, but like, you kind of get over it quickly. You know, it's like a Band-Aid. Like, okay, I see where this is going. I'm making an effort, and you just don't give a shit. So, my reaction was anger, and she had a lot of unjust perceptions of me that, and she was a little old. She was older than me, but she talked to me as if I didn't understand. Like I couldn't empathize, or that I just, you know, I just didn't know enough. And that's the biggest thing that really bothers me, is this whole like issue of maturity. There are a lot of people out there, just in general, that just cannot have any sort of confrontation in their life. They just can't handle it. And whenever they do have confrontation, they always have to feel like they're on top of it. You know what I mean? Like they come out on top of the confrontation. And that's not what it's about. And if anybody plays that game, like they have no value to you, really, because they're extracting all of your value. It's it's an attention thing. I've seen it so many times now that it's really easy to spot. And people people lie to themselves. I lied to myself. I knew what was going on. And it was a lot easier for me to deal with the emotions involved with it. But she's with someone else, and it happened right as she wasn't talking to me, which isn't a surprise. I think that everybody would know what was going on. It's very clear as day that she would, she just chose someone that would play her game. That's it. And that's fine. I mean, they can play that game together and deal with all of the emotional games they want to. But it's probably the best thing that ever happened to me in my life, if I'm being honest. And it felt like the worst thing that was happening to me, because I sacrificed a lot to give it another shot with this person. I sacrificed, a potentially good relationship. I honestly was not super invested in it, but the way I look at relationships now in general is and I logically understood this at the age of 25. I logically understood this, but I just, as people and emotional beings, we want to emotionally hold on to things. So letting go of it was difficult, but logically speaking, relationships are it's one part of life, and it only fulfills that one part. And there's only so much value you can extract from it, and a lot of it is very, very tangible and influential value. Meaning that someone can influence you in a more positive way or a more negative way, depending on the kind of relationship you are in. And so a lot of people look at their partner and what they selectively see the things that they like and never confront the things that they don't like. Which is why I think most relationships fail. I mean, if you really think about it, just relationships in general, we're not even talking about marriages, but like literally 99% of relationships fail. Like hardly anybody really stays with someone for, longer than like 7 years. But and that statistic's out there. You can find it. It's pretty well known. I know because I read a bunch of shit on the internet. But it is really just one part of it, and there's a lot of reasons why I personally made the decisions that I did in like choosing these shitty people to try to be in a relationship with. But a lot of it I know and have confronted the issue, and it's associated with my relationship with my mom. I mean, psychology stresses the importance of a nurturing mother, and there's lots of evidence that a nurturing father has a similar influence on young women as they're developing, and there's lots of data points about that's available online too, and just through personal experience, I can tell you that's a fairly true. But it that's something that everybody has to grip with in life. We all have to confront where we come from and at some point divorce ourselves. That wasn't meant to be a joke, but it's actually kind of funny. Divorce ourselves from the emotions that are associated with the fucked up shit that happens to us, really. But yeah, and I've made peace with that in my life. I mean, I don't really I don't feel vulnerable talking about this because I would not have a problem talking about any of this stuff with a stranger, really. So it doesn't bother me that this is going to be out on the internet or anything. But, yeah, I mean, I went like 10 years without talking to my mom, and she was fine with it. And I actually reached out to her to try to develop a relationship again, and within a year, she essentially cut me out of her life again, and I was completely fine. I was calm, collected, tried to talk to her about like what it was she was feeling, but she decided to cuss me out, and you can't change your parents, and like at this point, I think me and my brother both are just sort of, you do you, mom, like whatever. And personally, I have so much going on in my life. I have so many other things to focus on that I probably will not try to have a relationship with her again. The last time I most likely will talk to her is whenever she's on her deathbed. Her deathbed. And I know that sounds like harsh to say, but given the circumstances and everything that's happened and the way she is deciding to deal with it, I have no problem walking away because it's not anything I have done. I'm not taking the responsibility for that. These are her decisions. These are the way that she wants to live her life, and she can live her life that way. Maybe the last part of this title will be, dealing with a bad parental influence. But, my mom gave me life. She cared for me as a child. And I'm appreciative of that. I mean, she kept me alive. And the situation could have been a lot worse. I wasn't physically abused in any way or anything like that. It was all just like mental stuff with her and emotional stuff with her. So, and she does have a fairly serious mental illness. That's something that she's been aware of for a very long time and refuses to address. And it's really sad. But I have my family, and I would encourage anybody that's dealing with some of this stuff in your own way. You need to create your own support system and let go of a lot of things that are holding you back, because you're a lot smarter than you think you are. And there are some very real ways in which you're probably making your unhappiness worse. And making a decision to be better is not easy. But with the right people that are willing to understand you or make an effort to understand you, you can get to a better place. So, that'll conclude this episode. I hope someone, gets some value out of this. And the next time I do a solo episode, it'll probably be something completely unrelated to any of this. It'll probably be something like history related or current events. But yeah, thanks for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode.